Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of Mctv Sports. Alongside Dustin Cooley, I'm your host, Michael Conway. This week, we'll be discussing Marist Athletics, NBA, and NHL playoffs, the MLB, and the latest in news and sports this week. First, we will discuss Marist Athletics and the men and women's lacrosse tournament. All right, so first of all, the men and the women are both the 2 seed, and the men and the women are both going to play Monmouth as well for their first game in the tournament. One thing to look out for the men, obviously, is senior attack Joey Radin. He's been doing excellent this year, leading the team in goals, and he's the all-time scoring leader for the Red Foxes as well.
And coming off good news being drafted.
Yes, absolutely. He's going to play for the Charlotte Hounds in the Major League Lacrosse League next year, so that's certainly something that's exciting for him. And basically what they're looking to do, though, is they're focused right now. I've been talking to them. They're focused right now in the season, and specifically going back to the championship and playing Quinnipiac, who, of course, has had a great year this year, #1 in the MAC, and they're going to be hosting the tournament at their home field in Hamden, Connecticut. Marist, of course, is the 2 seed, and they're going to be looking to go there, play Monmouth, beat them, make their way to the championship, and have a rematch with Quinnipiac, which they beat last year, and which makes them, obviously, the MAC defending champs.
It's always got to be good to get revenge.
Yes, absolutely. That's been their main focus throughout the years to, get to the playoffs, get to the max, get through the regular season, which they've had some trouble. They've been bouncing around a 500 season. It's been below 500, then 500, then obviously they're doing better now. They have a pretty good record, and they're going to be going into the max with a strong win over NJIT and Detroit. So that's good for them as far as momentum is concerned, and obviously they're focused on Quinnipiac. Now moving over to the women, they're the 2 seed, like we said before, and they're going to be looking to play Monmouth as well. So any thoughts on that?
The women, just like the men, they're going to be looking to come off a strong performance and just go right into it. Allison Gianta, also the leading all-time scorer for the women's team, like Radin is for the men's. She's going to be looking to lead them. I actually was able to see her in action myself just a couple weeks ago, and she put up 4 goals in that game alone. So I know personally that she really steps up to her title. So that, along with their goaltender, who's got, I believe it's the best win percentage of all time.
Winningest goalie, yep.
They're definitely going to be tough competition to take out.
Excellent, absolutely. So we're looking forward to seeing both lacrosse teams play in the postseason. Moving on to softball for the Red Foxes. Rebecca Freeman is Player of the Week this year. The Marist team is 39-8 overall, and they're 13-1 in the MAC. So they're having an excellent season. A lot of wins for them. They're on a 17-game win streak.
16.
17, yep. 17 as of today.
As of today.
As of today, yes, because they won 7-2 against Fairfield. And talking more about Freeman, though, she hit batting average of .545 in the past 3 games, which were all wins, of course. She had 7 RBIs, scored 4 runs, and hit 6 home runs. 2 home runs. Her batting average for the year is .336, so she's been just doing incredible. And great for that team. They're doing excellent.
It's remarkable after last year where she batted .345 for the entire year and only got 5 home runs the entire season that she's already had this many so far. She's really stepping up her game and leading this team.
Absolutely.
Her batting average is slightly bit, but she's got a great batting average still. She's got a great on-base percentage. She's getting more power in her swings. So she's definitely going to propel this team, and I definitely think they could hit 20 games in a row.
Yeah, easily. They're an incredible team. And talking more about the win streak, that's an incredible number, 17 to have in a game like softball,
Not many can do it.
Where you play so many games to have a win streak like that, certainly incredible and a great feat for that team and just something that's going to propel them. They have a couple games coming up against Siena and also against Canassia, so those are going to be important games for them to win as well. Moving on from that, we're going to talk about women's water polo. They lost the championship this year, unfortunately, to Wagner. They did have an 11-3 win over Iona to get to that game, but then an 8-5 loss in the championship.
So it's kind of expected because Wagner was the number 1 seed.
Absolutely.
And Marist admitted they did get off to a good start. They scored the first goal, and at the half it was 4-3 Wagner. But in the second half, they just completely blew out Marist and ended up winning 8-5, like you said. So they started off well, but it's disappointing that they couldn't follow up with a good finish. One
good thing to see from that, though, is they had 2 players, Brooke Els and Katie Teegering. They were named to the MAC All-Tournament team, so that's good news for them. And when we come back, we'll be talking the second round of the NBA playoffs. And welcome back. The second round of the NBA playoffs has began with a roaring start. Let's start off with LeBron and the Cavs versus the Hawks.
You know, this is one of the series where I've really been rooting for the underdog because I'm not a fan of LeBron.
Of course.
But unfortunately, it looks like the Cavs are going to take this series fairly easily. You know, they already gone up 1-0, though the Hawks did have a very impressive comeback in the fourth quarter, led by Dennis Schroeder. You know, he led that team from, I believe it was an 18-point deficit to a couple of times where they could have taken the lead, but they failed to do so, and Cleveland was able to pull it out. There was, you know, a couple of calls that weren't made. It was very, very entertaining for a series that a lot of people expected to be over in just 4 games instant, myself included.
That's a good take. Last time on the show, I was here with Pete, and he said that Cleveland, he projects that they're going to sweep whoever they were going to play. We didn't know it was Atlanta at the time. And I kind of laughed at him for a second, because to think of a team to just go from round 1, sweep, round 2, sweep, to go right to the finals of the East, I thought was ridiculous. But the way they're playing right now, I mean, that was a great take by Pete, and I think that's what's going to happen as well.
I think it's more about the fact that the Eastern Conference is so weak right now. It's basically Cleveland and then everybody else in a second tier and then garbage.
That's certainly true. And moving on to the Heat, obviously the big thing about that, their most recent game was the overtime thriller. Kyle Lowry hit that shot absolutely out of nowhere. Half-court buzzer beater, took it to OT, and then Miami prevailed, obviously, which was good for them. I think that's going to be an excellent series. Their battle against the Hornets was a good one, and I think that they're playing great basketball. Of course, Chris Bosh, he's out right now, so I think that's also playing a part in that series. But, I mean, Miami, Toronto, great series so far.
It's definitely a great series. It may be the best series so far. Arguably, San Antonio Thunder is better, but you know, right now the Raptors, they come off a pretty rusty first round, if you ask me. They're top scorers. They didn't really have a good shooting percentage.
They should have handled Indiana quicker than they did.
They definitely should have, but you got to give Paul George a lot of credit.
Oh, absolutely, solid team from Indiana. But the 2 and the 7 matchup, that should be no question. Toronto advancing easier than they did, but it went to a 4-3 split.
It definitely should. You know, Miami, they are performing a lot better than certainly people expected them to. I actually have a lot of faith in them. You know, you mentioned Chris Bosh. Unfortunately, just hours ago, it was revealed that he is not going to come to the playoffs. He will not be helping them this season, which is a big disappointment. You know, I understand if it was due to health concerns because he's had his issues with blood clots. You know, he has said, and his wife has even said, doctors have said he's good to go, but obviously there's maybe something we don't know. And you know, for the sake of his health over the long term of his career, he's got to sit these games out, even if it means Miami getting knocked out. You know, if Bosh was back, I would probably say that Miami's the favorite to win that series, if not knock off Cleveland to go to the finals, because they know LeBron so well and they know the system.
Yeah, they're going to be a tough adversary if they do, in fact, go and meet the Cleveland. But now we're going to move back over to the West and talk about the Warriors to begin with. Obviously, they have a 2-0 series lead over Portland, and they're just doing swimmingly without Steph Curry. Which a lot of people,
putting it lightly.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, a lot of people were questioning his health and the ankle and the knee, obviously, and what are the Warriors going to look like without him. And they've just been doing excellent. Klay Thompson, Livingston, they've just been Draymond Green. They've been picking up the slack and performing excellent as a team. And I think that's what's going to make the difference against Portland. I think they might sweep this Portland series.
You know, I didn't think they'd be able to without Curry, but honestly, it looks like it. I mean, Portland, they even had a giant lead on the Warriors going into the fourth quarter, and they blew all of it, ended up losing by, I believe it was 11 points, game 2. So you see the power in this Warriors team, regardless of whether Curry's on the floor or not. They've got pretty much a very depthful team all around. There's no weaknesses. You could say maybe they don't have a quality big man because, Bogut, he's not stellar. He's pretty good, but that's not their style of play. They use Draymond Green as a kind of center. They play small ball. They make a lot of threes. They run the pace. And compared to the Blazers, who basically just have Lillard and some other guys, he's outmatched.
I think the thing that is going to make the difference in this series is that the Warriors play as a team. You put Steph Curry in there, he's the leader, he's the star, but they still play very well as a team. You take him out of the mix, they're playing well as a team, and they're winning games. So I think that's the difference maker here. Green had 17 points, Barnes had 13, Thompson had 27, Livingston had 14. You look at the Portland Trail Blazers and you see Lillard and McCollum kind of dominating, each having 25 and 22 points. So the mixing up of the teams, everyone's scoring. I think the Warriors are just a stronger team because they play better.
It's a better model.
Absolutely. Moving on to the Spurs and the Thunder now. Game 3 certainly going to set the tone for this series. The last 2 games have been very indecisive with the Spurs and the Thunder each collecting a win. The Spurs beating the Thunder, though, that was tremendous. The 124-92 game certainly set the tone, but then the Thunder came out the next game and won that. So it's anyone's series at this point, but obviously the Spurs are the stronger team. What's your take on this?
At this point, I don't say it's really that close as you stated, just because they did blow out Oklahoma City, and yes, the Thunder came back and they won by only a single point in Game 2 versus the Spurs. But there was a lot of hysteria about the calls at the end of the game.
Oh, absolutely.
The NBA even admitted there were 5 calls that they should have made that they didn't. Aldrich and Leonard have really been leading the Spurs, in addition to their core big 3 and their other role players. But the Thunder have, basically just had to rely on Durant and Westbrook. And when they are not hitting, they have no chance.
That push that we just saw, though, we're going to be talking about that for a while, so that's certainly something that played a big factor in that game at the end, because if they get that call, they don't score that point, and I think the Spurs win.
It was a series of calls, though. We can't just say it was that one.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, that's for sure. But I think that at that point in time in the game, that would have been the difference maker. So I think that played a huge factor in that game, and it'll be interesting to see how the referees ref the game for the rest of the series.
Best series so far.
Absolutely.
Well, that's all for the NBA. When we come back, we'll be talking about the NHL playoffs with
Brett Butler.
Thank you.
And welcome back. We're here with Brett Butler to talk about NHL playoffs. So starting off, we're going to talk first about the Caps and the Penguins. The hit on Mata and Orpik versus the hit on Johansson by Letang. Let's talk a little bit about fighting during playoff hockey.
All right, so first off, this is a big, no-no. Taking penalties, especially in the playoffs, can cost you a game. And so you don't want to be doing this. The hit by Letang on Johansson, he's out for the next game, while the hit on Mata by Bruce Orpik took him out for 3 games. So, for big players like this to be kicked out of these games, be suspended for, a serious thing like this, it shouldn't happen.
So it's something we see kind of in the cultural norm of regular season hockey. There's a fight, whatever, it's a custom. You go into the penalty box. But in playoff hockey, that time where they have the power play, it's so influential because this is a good, do or die situation. You win these games or you go home. So fighting, that cultural norm that we see, it kind of fades away. It takes a back seat to, hey, let's go out there, let's win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you like I said, you can't risk these things because you've played an 82-game season up until this, and now you're in the second round of the playoffs. You don't want to jeopardize, your odds going forward. And on top of that, potentially losing your players, potentially losing, a player on another team. Could, obviously, if they lose their players, it's going to help you, but it's a very big risk.
Will this affect the series outcome?
I think that, because it's about even, they both have lost one of their biggest players. I think that it's going to kind of even it out. I'm still leaning more towards the Penguins compared to the Caps.
Okay.
Simply because if you watch or if you guys paid attention to how the Penguins are doing against the Rangers, the Penguins absolutely cremated them.
Yeah.
The last part of the season, the Penguins were absolutely they got their stuff together and they look like an absolute playoff team. And I have good faith that they're going to go a long way.
All right, a lot of people are saying Capitals in this series, and you're predicting Penguins?
I think I'm going to say Penguins on this.
All right. Moving on, we're going to talk about Ovi and Crosby to kind of, focus on more. more of that. Do the two of them need to step up, or is it the teams around them?
So it seemed to me, for Crosby at least, against the Rangers, Crosby was doing really well, and now he's kind of slowing down again. Where Ovechkin, the Caps' #1, superstar here, he seems to be finding his game, and he's scoring a lot more goals. And if Ovechkin keeps this up and Crosby doesn't keep up, it's going to result in a huge problem for the Penguins going forward.
All right, so to move from that series to the one about the St. Louis Blues and the Dallas Stars, who do the Blues think they are? Beating the defending championship Blackhawks and now putting it to the Stars with a 6-1 win, their most recent game. They had to change the goalie and everything. Is this unprecedented, or if you've been watching the NHL regular season, is this to be just understood?
Yeah, I think it's a little disappointing, especially for the Stars, who were a President's Trophy contending team for basically the entire season. To all of a sudden give up 6 goals like this, and now the Blues are finally, just like the Penguins were towards the end, are finding their game.
They're getting in a good rhythm.
And if you keep this up, if you start getting momentum, especially in playoffs, it goes a long way. And so if the Blues keep this up, I have a feeling that they're going to do pretty well, and they're going to beat the Stars out this series.
All right, talking about teams that are kind of making a big splash in the playoffs, let's move to the Islanders and the Lightning. The Islanders round 1 game, they back into the playoffs as the wild card. They play the Panthers, they beat the Panthers, unprecedented, and now they're kind of starting to hold their own against the Lightning. So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's also talk about Stamkos and will he return?
All right, so the Islanders, against the Panthers, that was first off a very good series, a nice 7-game series. The Islanders came back in overtimes, and they're looking pretty good. Now that they're against the Tampa Bay, I want to say that Tampa is, a much better contender against them. Tampa Bay, when they brought back Jonathan Drouin, he seems to be really making a huge impact for Tampa, and they need to watch out for that. If the Lightning wants to win the series, they're going to need to keep pressure on this Islanders, and the Islanders they don't seem too effective on their power play. So if they want any chance of beating the Lightning, my say is that they need to work on their power play and they need to get some extra goals in there. As for Stamkos, Stamkos is obviously the Lightning's #1 player. It's their Ovechkin. Right now he's out with the blood clot still. It doesn't seem like he's going to return anytime soon. But once they get Stamkos back, you can be absolutely sure that Lightning is going to become a very, very powerful team.
Now, the Lightning's goalie, Ben Bishop, has actually said that the games have really been determined by luck, why the Islanders have gotten the success they did. Just a couple lucky bounces that end up being goals. Would you agree with that statement? Maybe the Lightning had their own luck with the last game. Do you think that's going to continue to be in their favor going forward? What do you think? I
feel like this is a very common thing throughout the playoffs where you get a lucky bounce. You hear a lot of goalies saying that they need to come up with these timely saves. If you want to win the playoffs, you have to get nice timely bounces. You have to get these these odd shots because these goalies are so on point. They're so up to where they need to be, and that's the only way you're going to end up scoring these goals other than power plays. So I feel like while there were a few lucky bounces against Bishop for the Islanders, I feel like you have to rely on these in order to expect to win games.
All right, we're going to move on now to the Sharks and the Predators. So the Sharks are up 2-1 in the series on the Preds. How will the rest of this series play out? So at first, the first 2 games, the Sharks absolutely came out and were absolutely devouring the Predators, and it really didn't look like the Predators were trying. But then towards the end of the second game and into the third, the Preds finally seemed to find their rhythm and actually seemed like they're going to be playing a nice, tight, very close game with the Sharks. The Sharks are very powerful in their attack with Thornton and Couture and who am I forgetting? Brent Burns. Of course, yeah.
Brent Burns, the big beard Chewbacca guy. So he, if if the Predators want any chance of beating the Sharks, they're going to have to stop those big forces with their, James Neal and all their big defenders.
Now, the Predators are really good when it comes to third period goals. They've been doing this for the past about year and a half so. They always are able to come from behind. They never give up. They've always got their heart in the games. You said that they need to overcome those strengths of the Sharks. Do you think that this determination they show at the end of every game is going to be able to lead them to do that, or is it not going to be enough?
I'm really, hoping that the Predators can come through, because if they're just going to sit on their heels and try and play defense, the entire game, it's going to be very, very difficult for a high-scoring team like the Sharks, it's going to be very hard to stop a high-scoring team like the Sharks. So if the Predators want to have any chance of beating the Sharks this playoffs, I think that they need to start, getting a lot more from, their forwards, like, Phil Pula. So I feel like they need to start to get on their feet and start moving.
All right. So now that we've talked about all the matchups, give us your predictions.
So overall, I'm thinking that the finals are going to end up being the Penguins, who have been super hot the last part of the season.
Okay.
Absolutely cremated the Rangers.
Yep.
They're playing very well against the Caps right now. It seems to go back and forth, but I'm thinking that the Penguins are gonna make it, and I'm thinking that the San Jose Sharks are gonna make it to the finals.
So the Cinderella story with the Predators is over.
Yeah. So the Predators, I feel, unless they start and they find their offense, I feel like it's gonna be very difficult to beat the San Jose Sharks, even with a lucky bounce or two. So these two highly offensive teams, I think, are going to go at it, and I think it's going to be a fantastic Stanley Cup final.
All right. Excellent. Thanks, Brett, for your predictions. And when we come back, we'll be talking about the MLB. And we are back to talk about the MLB, starting off with the red-hot Mets. Dustin, what are your thoughts about them so far?
The Mets, they've honestly had a good start so far, but I got to be a heartbreaker for Mets fans right here. It's not going to last. They're not going to get to the World Series again. I'm sorry. I got to be the bearer of bad news.
That's a tough take on that. They're looking real good.
I know, but this is very early in the season, and pretty much everything is going right for them right now. You can't expect that to hold up the entire year.
So you're saying it's downhill from here. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying it's drastically downhill, but I'm saying something has to give. The entire rotation is pitching phenomenally right now. At least one of those guys has to start giving up runs. And in terms of their lineup, they really can't afford to take on extra players because Cespedes has eaten up so much money.
He is, yeah.
He got $27.5 million a year on that contract. He was way overpaid. It's going to hurt them in the long run.
All right. Well, that's a tough call for the Mets. I would think you'd be a little bit more optimistic thinking about how good they've done so far. Second in the NL East, 17-9 for a record. Second only to the Nationals, who are just, playing incredibly. I'm gonna go against you here. I'm gonna say not only will they be back in the NL Championship, but they will definitely be back into the World Series. I think they're doing good. Baseball is a long season, though. It's more of a marathon than a sprint. But that's my take on the Mets. Moving on to the Red Sox, though, what do you think about them? They're also playing excellent.
The Red Sox, similarly, I do say they're going to have a slight drop. I don't think it'll be quite as drastic, and I say drastic conservatively about the Mets. The Red Sox, their pitching has had some ups and downs. David Price has been an absolute disaster for them. I have correctly predicted that. One of the worst contracts in the offseason, 7 years, $217 million, and it was horrible. Their hitting has been pretty solid from their younger players, which is something I actually think is going to continue, which is why they'll still have a solid season. But their older guys like Ortiz and Pedroia, those guys are really hitting the ball well over 300 each, and I think they're probably going to have a bigger decline. So that's why we're going to see them fall out. And their bullpen, they've got a lot of holes there. They basically gave up all their trade assets just to get Craig Kimbrell, and he's not going to be enough for them.
All right. Well, I think the Red Sox are going to do a little better than that. You're seeming kind of pessimistic here. One thing, though, about the Red Sox certainly is Pablo Sandoval. I was directly against that signing. I didn't like him. He shows up to spring training hideously overweight, and now he's out for 15 days, I believe.
For the season.
Or he is out for the season?
They're in luck.
Yeah. And breaking the belt, I mean, that was just embarrassing. You embarrass yourself, you embarrass the team like that. I was against him from the jump, but, they did sign him and Hanley Ramirez at around the same time. And I think Hanley's turning out better, putting him at first base.
He's hitting
is
well.
Interesting. Yeah. Travis Shaw, obviously, is someone to talk about. He's kind of like a Brock Holt utility infielder kind of guy. He's got 3 homers already this year. I think he's a great fit for the Sox and certainly what they need right now as far as like guys like David Ortiz starting to transition out of the club. I think they have a lot of good young guys. Mookie Betts, Xander Bogaerts, good guys coming up from the farm, stuff like that.
Jackie Bradley Jr.
Jackie Bradley Jr. obviously is the perfect case study of how a farm system works and how you get a guy up in the ranks. He played with them when they won the World Series in 2013, and he's certainly been a huge payoff for the team and a solid part of the outfield there in center. So moving on to their league rival, the Yankees have been having the exact opposite year of the Mets and the Red Sox, currently in the cellar with an 8-16 record in the AL East. What's your take on the Yanks?
This is the first team I'm going to show a little bit of optimism about.
Very interesting.
And you can admit I have some bias as a Yankees fan. So far, their rotation has just been worse than awful. It's been atrocious.
Yeah.
Tanaka has been the only reliable starter. In that rotation, Severino has been shockingly awful for me because honestly, I thought he was going to be capable of being the #1 starter in this rotation. Their bullpen has been disappointing because that was supposed to be the best bullpen in baseball.
Yeah.
Dylan Betances has been a shell of himself from what he was last year. Andrew Miller has still been solid, but not quite what he was last year. Their one shining bit of hope is here comes Aroldis Chapman, who I think is the best closer in baseball, who can throw over 100 miles an hour.
Certainly one of the best.
Without breaking a sweat, goes over 100 miles an hour. But in terms of their lineup, they're going to have issues all season unless they finally are willing to bite the bullet and get their high-paid elderly players out of the lineup, like A-Rod and Headley. A-Rod right now, he just went on the 15-day DL, so they got a little break. And they're probably going to get some momentum now in the next 2 weeks or so. But when he comes back, they sadly will probably kill that. I've got some hopes for them, but they're probably still a middle-of-the-division kind of team.
The Yankees usually, after they have a bad year, or even sometimes after they have a good year, they'll go out and they'll pay whatever sum of money to get the best player in baseball. Who's that right now, and are the Yankees going to possibly go after him?
The name being thrown around a lot as the future Yankee is Bryce Harper. The megastar. He just signed a giant endorsement deal with Under Armour, really cementing the Under Armour brand after they just got Steph Curry to represent the NBA.
Yeah, certainly a good year for them, Harper and Curry, the 2 best athletes in their respective sports.
Arguably. Some people say
of course,
maybe Trout or
arguably,
LeBron, but I do agree right now with that. It's definitely going to help them with their market share versus places like Nike that have been totally dominant
Their main
throughout.
competitors, yeah.
And, we're going to have another rapid-fire question about the NFL. We're looking at Jeremy Tunsil, the guy who was able to fall all the way to pick 13 after being a possible top 5 draft pick after his video.
That's what will happen if you have a video of you taking a bong rip go public, during the draft, 5 minutes before the draft.
Was it a good decision to draft him?
Time will tell. Hopefully he doesn't have to get drug tested by the Dolphins. He's the 3rd offensive tackle taken in the draft, and he certainly dropped down lower to where he should have been. The problem with this, though, is that the attention should be on the players who are doing well. Goff, Wentz, Bosa, those are the guys we should be talking about, but right now we're talking about a guy who is smoking weed. So I think him kind of taking over the draft, this is always going to be the Tunsil draft, so I think that's one problem with that.
All right, well, moving on, we are going to head over to
talk about Space Jam.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Recent reports have came out that said that LeBron James will be the star in the new Space Jam 2.
I'm kind of honestly repressing that. That's why I had a little trouble there since I'm not a fan of LeBron James. He's going to be the star. Unfortunately, I don't like to see that because of the LeBron-Jordan comparison when I think LeBron's very overrated.
So what's your take on it? Good, bad?
I'd say bad, but, if it was up to me, Jordan would be in it again. What about you?
Interesting. I think LeBron is the Jordan of our era, and I think he's a great athlete despite that. And I think that's going to be a good movie. I can't wait to go see it. And that's all we have for this semester. I'm Mike Conway alongside Dustin Cooley. Thanks so much for joining us again. Have a great night.